Ex-fiance and I planned our breakup before lockdown, but spending months in isolation revived my feelings and doubts. My fiance and I have been dating since college, and as soon as we graduated, I proposed to her. However, we decided to get married only once we're both financially stable and okay with our jobs. 2 years down the road, we've also been living together for that long. We now meet those requirements. However, our love for each other disappeared, or at least the spark we used to have. We became very busy. Her with her graduate education plus job and me with my work. I admit I've been spending way too much time in the office, and once I get home, I use my free time to get ahead with deadlines and stuff. She's also constantly stressed as she's juggling her education and her teaching job. We never had time for each other anymore, but we were still busy enough to even notice that. Then March came, she approached me with the subject and we had a long talk. It was an emotional one. We've known each other for so long after all, and we were reaching our end after so many years. She was already in the process of booking flights to stay with her parents for a while when the lockdown was announced. She decided to not go home anymore in fear of possibly carrying the virus and infecting her family. I agreed with that decision, and since then we've been isolating together. We're both working from home now, and she also finished her studies on April. Because of that, we've been having a lot of free time. At first, it felt a bit awkward. I didn't even know how to talk to her anymore. I got used to short and empty small talk with her. But she's always known how to get me out of my shell, so it didn't take too long before we were having full conversations once again. I just found out that she's had a newfound love for playing Sims 4. She showed me the family she was playing with currently, and I noticed that it was herself and me, plus a dog and a cat whose names were our birth months, lol. She had been so shy initially, but she doesn't know that I was also feeling flustered then. I think this is the start of me questioning our decision to break up. After that, it was the small things. I also caught her up on how my life has been, like my shitty supervisor, how I haven't been taking care of my health lately, etc. And since then she started pushing me to work out with her, and she's also been trying to get me into healthier options of food. I also came to find out new things about her in these months, which is surprising considering how we've been together for many years now. These past few months have been really good. I felt like I was brought back to the times when we first met, and I feel like a high schooler with a crush. The thing is, I'm not sure if I can trust my feelings right now. The only person I've had contact with was her, except for my frequent calls with family and friends, and I may be just having an infatuation right now. I also think we're lucky since we're both very free right now. But I keep thinking, what happens after the lockdown ends? Will we go back to being those busy people that have too little time for each other? I also don't know how to approach her with this. She's always been the talker in our relationship, but at the same time I'm also afraid to talk about it and potentially ruin things for us right now. What if she doesn't feel the same? What if she's just treating me kindly because that's what she is, a genuinely kind person? The only hope I'm holding on to right now is the fact that she hasn't planned on going back to her family yet, despite domestic travels being allowed in our country now. How do I go on about this? Update 1. In my original post, I asked if what I'm feeling could be just an infatuation that would go as quickly as I came. But I realized that my feelings for her never really disappeared to begin with. It's like my heart just went in a deep sleep and I forgot how much feelings I carry for her. I think some of you may know, and have pointed out, that I'm not really good at communicating my feelings. I tend to keep things to myself, and my fiancé is one of the few people who can be patient with that. Some suggested to write a letter instead, or a note, or marry her in Sims. I ended up with drafts of sappy letters that I ended up scraping in a sad attempt to recreate us in The Sims. But still, I wanted to make an effort to show her what I couldn't say through words. I've heard about her wanting a few DLCs in The Sims in the past, so I had the idea to buy a few for her. Sims DLCs are pretty expensive, especially in our currency. Surprised her by stealing her laptop for a few hours, and once I gave it back to her, she was elated and so happy. It was really nice seeing her get so excited over it. We played together that whole day and tried to solve the mystery in Strangerville, a game pack in The Sims. It was so fun. The next day, I found her in the kitchen trying to bake something. It was a blueberry cheesecake recipe she saw on YouTube. I basically became her cooking assistant that day, helping her as much as I could, and we ended up with a pretty decent outcome that I bet would have tasted better if I hadn't messed up so much. She still said she had so much fun and loved the cheesecake though. The next day, which is just yesterday, something important happened. We were basically just snuggled up on the couch playing when our Sims just autonomously tried for baby in the bed. It was hilarious and we initially laughed about it, but then we got pretty silent. She then closed her laptop and hugged me tightly then, without saying anything. I think that was my realization that she feels the same as I do. So I knew I had to speak up. I'm still impressed at myself for managing to talk yesterday without choking up, basically opening up the conversation like, "Are you planning to go to your parents soon?" And she said no, she doesn't feel like it yet. I asked her why. She told me she wanted to stay. I told her I wanted her to stay too. We went to sleep that night just huddled together. And even though we didn't really explicitly say it, I think we're now aware of each other's feelings, and it feels like a really huge improvement to me. Earlier we ate breakfast together. We weren't as chatty as we've been the last few months, but the silence was comforting. We also watched Knives Out together. We haven't had the conversation yet, but I'm going to bring it up to her tonight. I'm really glad this whole ordeal went much nicer than I expected it would, and I'm relieved I didn't let my doubts get the best of me. Though I still have to get better with how I communicate things, I'm going to learn for her. Update 2. Okay, hi. I posted this thinking the same people who saw my last post would respond, and seeing that a few users wanted an update back then, I thought, what the hell, why not give them a little update right now and leave it at that. Now I have 5x more the audience I had the last time. Right now my fiancé is sleeping next to me. Yes, we had the talk. As soon as I posted this, I logged out and gathered myself so I can tell her what's been in my mind for months. It's not really something so exciting. We basically just sat down together and talked about what went wrong before. I told her the things I said in my last post, and she admitted to worrying about what happens after the lockdown gets fully lifted too. We both acknowledged that we worked too hard to become financially stable so that we can get married. Right now though, all we could do is promise and talk about how we're going to manage our time better, since we have no idea if our country is ever going to return to normal. The curve is not getting flattened at all and the quarantine is about to get extended again. And then we talked about our feelings. I got to tell her I love her again, for the first time in years probably, and she told me the same. After that it was back to a lighter conversation. We basically just bonded until she fell asleep. I honestly thought only a handful of people would see my post. I made sure to use Reddit because this isn't really a big platform in our country and I was sure she wouldn't see this post, but now that there are like 20k upvotes as I'm typing this, I think she might stumble upon this post sooner or later. Well then, I know she's going to be whining a lot about this, but she'd be glad to know that a lot of people found our relationship wholesome. Update 3. She found the post. Of course she did. It took her like 3 days and a cousin sending her a screenshot with "Is this you too?" for it to happen, but she read the whole thing, comments and all, and then came into the bedroom holding my phone like it was a contraband item. She sat on the edge of the bed and went from fake offended to quietly crying in less than a minute, which is exactly her in one clip. Dramatic intro, soft-hearted finale. She said, "You big idiot," and then hugged me so hard my ear was pressed to her collarbone. Then she told me I owe the internet a cheesecake. We ended up talking more that night than we ever used to after work. Not the heavy what are we talk, but the sticky in-between stuff that used to get lost when we were both half asleep and half on our phones. She told me she was scared, actually scared, of us slipping back into the version of ourselves that only met in the kitchen to open and close the fridge. I was honest and told her my brain has this switch that gets flipped by deadlines, and I go into this tunnel where all I can see are numbers and emails. She made me look her in the eyes and promise that if I feel that switch flip, I'll say something, even if it's just "Hey, I'm disappearing," her hand on my cheek the whole time like we were teenagers again. It felt ridiculous and essential at the same time. Real life did not do us any favors with timing. My supervisor decided to be himself again and pushed a last-minute urgent deliverable that was basically 3 projects stapled together. I could feel the tunnel yawning open. At 7 p.m., my laptop was still warm on my thighs and she put a bowl in front of me. A literal bowl, she said, sacrificed to the silence gods, with a straight face. The deal was, phones and laptops go in the bowl at 7. I did a full-body wince. I also did it. We sat there blinking like we were underwater for a second and then she asked me if I remembered the stray cat that used to sleep on the hood of my old car. We ended up talking about every stray animal we've ever tried to adopt as kids and then somehow about our future hypothetical dog. We disagreed on sizes. I want a medium, she wants a chunky small, agreed on floppy ears, and by the time we finished she had leaned her head on my shoulder. I still got up early the next morning to finish the thing, but it wasn't at 11 p.m. with my stomach full of acid and guilt. It was with coffee and a human next to me, which feels like a different universe. On the subject of animals, we have a dog now, or technically we're fostering an Aspen from a local shelter, but I know a setup when I see one. A volunteer posted this picture of a brown dog with one ear that wouldn't stand up and a grin that could sell toothpaste, and my fiancé just handed me the phone without looking at me, like the dog had already packed her tiny suitcase. We got her the next morning. They called her June at the shelter because she came in last month. June is chaos. She thinks the doorbell is a mortal enemy and the mop is a snake and the mirror dog is her long-lost twin. She also watches my fiancé like she hung the moon and cries if she goes to the bathroom without inviting June along. I did not know I loved this much slobber. Our apartment now has paw prints on parts of the floor I didn't know could be touched and I have never been happier to surrender rugs. June accidentally turned into our first real test. 2 nights in, my supervisor called me at 8:30 about one small edit and I picked up automatically and moved into the bedroom so the noise wouldn't bother her. June followed me, circled, then finally sat on my foot like a paperweight. My fiancé stayed in the living room, but she got quiet, and I know that quiet now. By the time I came out, June had stress chewed the strap of her sandal and my fiancé was sitting on the floor holding it like a toddler had ruined her homework. She wasn't angry, she was that particular mix of tired and disappointed that used to be the air in our apartment during those last months, and I swear I felt it like a low-pressure system move through my chest. I apologized, not with the lazy sorry I say to any slight around the house, but actually apologized. I told her I didn't even think, I just answered and got pulled instead of saying no. I asked her if we could try that bowl again and make it a thing. She said okay, but she wanted me to call him back, right then, and tell him I'd send it in the morning. I looked at my screen for an embarrassingly long time. I called. He did the thing where you could hear him smile like, oh no problem. In that way that means problem. But he didn't push it. I hung up shaking and kind of stupidly proud. She kissed me like I'd just fought a bear for her sandal, and then we looked up tutorials on how to fix leather straps with needle and thread like two grandmas. That bowl, by the way, has become this silly talisman now. We sit our phones in, we drop our work there, and we make dinner. A lot of it has been us failing recipes in increasingly creative ways. We remade the blueberry cheesecake and I was convinced I had it this time, but I forgot to put the gelatin in the mix and it listed tragically to one side like a yacht. She christened it the Titanic and we ate every single slanted slice. We've also somehow started watching movies we should have already seen according to the internet. She sobbed during about time and I pretended to have an eyelash in my eye for 20 minutes straight. We did one more thing I've always been allergic to, which is talk to a counselor. One of her friends knew someone who was doing online sessions for couples during quarantine and we tried it. I was sure it would be two strangers peering at each other over choppy video while we confessed generic sins, but it was good. The guy wasn't weirdly nosy or preachy. He just asked questions like, what does busy look like in your house? And how do you know when the other person is reaching for you? The weirdest, best part was when he asked us to come up with small, daily things that would be our anchors. Not huge romantic gestures, just a thing that means I choose you right now. We credit him for the bowl and for this other habit that seems tiny but has rewired our evenings. We walk. We put on masks, put June on a neon green leash, and circle our block as the sky does what skies do at sundown. We talk about nothing and everything. It's not complicated. It's an excuse to match our footsteps for 30 minutes, which is exactly the point. I can't believe I'm writing this part. I proposed again. To the same person. With the same ring. It felt both completely unnecessary and exactly necessary. I told her I wanted to ask properly in our real life, not just be grandfathered in from a younger, dumber version of me. It took me a week of sneaking and about 12 attempts to not make it cringe. I ended up doing it the only way I knew how might actually reach her, The Sims. I built a tiny version of our current apartment in the game. I had to cheat money, please don't arrest me, I needed the nice counters, and I made our Sims dress in the outfits we were actually wearing that day. I placed the little wedding arch from another pack on the balcony that we don't have in real life. I asked her to come help me with something in Strangerville, pretending I couldn't figure out how to make the spores stop or whatever. She sat down behind me with her chin on my shoulder and I had our Sims walk outside. The game did its music and the neighbors came over to clap and I paused it right before the vows. I turned around with the actual ring and said, can we do this for real this time, not just with the old habit version of us, but with this version who walks a dog and fights with managers and names cakes? She went full silence and her mouth did the small rabbit thing and then she was nodding and saying yes like 3 different ways. She said she didn't need a new ring, that this one had been waiting the whole time, and that if I made her cry on our sofa one more time she was going to ban me from The Sims for a week. June brought over the destroyed sandal like it was an offering to the marriage gods. It was ridiculous and perfect. We told our families together over video calls. My parents looked like they were trying not to clap, like if they clapped they'd scare the happiness away. Her mom yelled at me playfully and asked why I didn't just propose in the kitchen like a normal person, and her dad kept clearing his throat like he had a grain of rice stuck, which is his tell for being emotional. We didn't pick a date. Our country still feels like someone is hitting the snooze button on normal life every 2 weeks and we don't want our joy to be tied to a calendar we can't control. We decided we want 2 ceremonies in a way, the legal one when it's actually safe to go to the paperwork and have our parents see us say the boring out loud stuff, and then later, when we can actually hug people and dance without worrying, we'll throw a party with too much food and bad dancing. She made me promise I will wear the shirt she likes that makes me look like a decent person in society. I made her promise to let me at least do one slow dance that is not to Ed Sheeran. We shook on it. We had one bad day. I feel like I have to include it because pretending it's been only movie montages feels dishonest, and because that day is actually what made me sure we're doing this right. I had a stomach episode at 3 a.m., don't eat spicy noodles at midnight, noted, and I was a horror show on the bathroom floor. She sat there with me, handed me water, made oat soup like her mom used to make and literally counted my breaths until my body relaxed. The next morning I was in a fog and she got short with me over something small, June getting into the trash, and I snapped at her. It was the exact tone I used to use when I was stretched thin all the time. She stopped, turned off the sink, and said, that was old you. I didn't like him. Do you want to try again? It was such a simple line and it dropped me right into the present. I apologized properly and then I went back to bed because I was a zombie. She got into bed too and put her cold feet on my legs, which is her love language apparently. There have been some oddly vivid small moments that I keep going back to. We had a brownout during a storm and played cards by candlelight like we were 80. She beat me in tongits 3 times and then taught me a trick my Lola definitely would not approve of. We stood on the balcony that is not a balcony, just the window, and watched the rain turn the alley into mirror glass, while June barked at thunder like she was filing a complaint with management. She started teaching free online review sessions for some of her students who weren't able to attend their regular classes anymore, and I sat there doing spreadsheets for her sign-ups, watching her explanation face, the one where her eyebrows do this little dance when she's showing how to solve something, and I swear I fell in love with her again in a way that surprised me. It's cheesy to say you fall in love with someone's face while they talk about math, but there we were. One last thing I'm proud of and will probably brag about forever: I went to the doctor. It's small for some people, but I've been ignoring my health for longer than I want to admit. She literally made me book the appointment while she watched, which was the only way it was going to happen. The doctor told me I have the beginnings of acid reflux and I should stop pretending I'm 19 and immune to spicy instant noodles and bad coffee. My fiancée put her hand on my knee during the video call and said, "See? Told you, in that way that means I love you, drink water." We came home and she made me this ginger tea that tasted like it could cure bad attitudes. She keeps sneaking vegetables into things. I keep pretending not to see and then thanking her anyway. We haven't opened the box with the wedding notebook yet, the one that has old swatches and scribbles, but we did stick a cheap little paper calendar on the fridge and wrote our life across the top like fools. We filled it with the boring stuff, garbage days, her free class schedule, my deadlines, and the not boring stuff, walks, movie nights, the bowl at 7. We wrote "Try for baby?" on the far corner of a month with a question mark, and then we both stood there and laughed and erased it and put "Try for plant" instead. We came home with a snake plant that even I can't kill. We named him August. June keeps trying to eat August. This house is chaos in the best way. If you're reading this because you recognize something of your own relationship in the wreckage of ours, I don't have advice that fits on a mug. All I know is I had to choose to be in this every day in a dozen small ways I was too lazy or too scared to do before. And she had to choose me, again, not the version of me that proposed in a parking lot after graduation because that version had a good ring selection and good intentions, but the one who will pick up the call from his boss, feel the old panic, and still put the phone in the bowl. She's asleep next to me again as I type this. June is on my feet like a furry ankle weight. The fan is doing its constant airplane noise. We're not who we were 4 months ago. We are us, but awake. I'm going to log off and put my phone in a bowl like a responsible adult, and then I'm going to wake her up because I promised her blueberry pancakes in the morning and my batter always turns out better if she's watching from the counter, pretending not to judge my terrible flipping technique. And if she does stumble on this update on her own again, hi Amor, the internet says congratulations, and I guess so do I, again. Update 4. We did the ridiculous, impossible, strangely ordinary thing. We got legally married in the middle of a Tuesday with our faces half covered and our hands smelling like pharmacy shelves. I think part of me thought the pandemic would send us some kind of cinematic sign for when to do it, like all the birds in our street flying in formation spelling now. What actually happened was she refreshed a government page for 2 weeks straight like she was trying to win concert tickets, and then one afternoon she looked up from her laptop and said, very calmly, "They open appointments. There's one on the 21st. The way she said it made it sound like we were picking a day to wash curtains. We stared at each other for a full minute and then June sneezed on my ankle and that was the yes. It was not grand, and yet it felt like we accidentally brought thunder into a room. We wore the decent human shirt and her white dress that is not actually a dress but a jumpsuit she loves because it has pockets big enough to hide snacks and a small revolution. I ironed while she did her makeup under a ring light, both of us moving around each other like we were in a choreography we didn't know we knew. We stuck our phones in the bowl at 7 the night before like it was holy ritual and slept beside each other with that quiet electricity you get when you're a kid and your class is going to the zoo the next day. City Hall was a symphony of plastic chairs and temperature guns. We stood 6 feet away from 2 other couples who looked like us, formal from the chest up, tennis shoes and nerves peeking out below. The judge mispronounced my middle name and then tried to correct it and made it worse and we all laughed, which I think was the best icebreaker available to humans. She squeezed my hand so hard my fingers remembered it for an hour. Our parents were on a video call propped up on a stack of forms by a pen cup, their faces in little boxes like they were watching a documentary about us. My father did his worried eyebrow lift every time someone coughed. Her mother asked the judge to hold up the signed paper to the camera so she could take a screenshot for the family group chat. The judge indulged, got blinded by the flash, and said, "Congratulations, kids, even though we are 2 tax-paying adults with a rescue dog and acid reflux." June did not come inside, we are not heathens, but she wore a bow tie and sat in the backseat and cried like we had left her in a strange new galaxy. When we came out, she leapt into the front and tried to lick our masks like she could tell we had new faces underneath. We drove home with a bag of overpriced palabok and a bucket of chicken because what is romance if not carbs and decisions you don't regret? We danced in our living room to a song that was definitely not Ed Sheeran. I picked Ben and she approved with this little nod, and then we took off the nice clothes and stood in our kitchen in old shirts and the giant paper hanging calendar that says our life staring at us like, okay then, name this. Calling her my wife feels like putting on a jacket that already knows my shoulders. It's still new enough that I try it out loud when she's brushing her teeth and she rolls her eyes like she's 50% annoyed and 50% someone who stuck the ring box under a pillow at 21 and had to wait for me to catch up. We video called our families again that night and her dad did the throat clear in a way that meant he had a stadium full of words and no courage to send them out, And then he finally managed, "I am proud of you both," which is basically a confetti cannon in father language. Work tried to crush my mood the next day because of course it did. My supervisor sent one of those emails that begin with quick one and end with a 47 bullet point manifesto. I felt that old tunnel open like a mouth again, and then I looked at the bowl, sitting on the counter like a talisman. She was at the table building a slide deck for her students. She looked up at me, probably felt the weather change in my face. I put my phone in that ridiculous bowl. The sound it made, plastic on ceramic, was a small sound. It was also a noise I will remember when I die. I finished the deliverable in the morning in 2 hours fresh, not in 4 hours of staring the night before. It was embarrassing how simple the math worked out when I didn't try to murder my sleep. The next week, something bigger happened. A different company emailed me out of nowhere. A colleague I respect had moved and recommended me, and suddenly there was an option in my inbox that looked like air. I read the email 3 times and stood in the doorframe like that would help. She said, "Do you want it?" Not, "Is it safer?" Not, "What will our parents say?" Just, "Do you want it?" My mouth did a fish, and then I said yes, and then I said I was scared, and then I listed our rent, June's vet bills, my mother's blood pressure medicines, the alphabet of all the responsible things. She said, "We can do scared and responsible," and then she made me sit on the floor with the laptop and helped me write a reply that sounded like me and not like a boring LinkedIn feed. 2 weeks later, I resigned. My supervisor did the tight little smile and said he was disappointed, which is office code for "how dare you grow up," when it wasn't on my calendar. My wife hugged me like I had just found a way out of a maze I had built around myself. I spent a lot of years thinking my value was in how late I could stay awake and how fast I could answer. It turns out my value might be in what I choose to give my eyes to when I am awake. The counselor is still in our lives, which is something I did not expect to say and not feel defensive about. We do sessions once every 2 weeks, and they've started to feel like a standing dinner with a version of ourselves that asks better questions. He gave us one exercise that sounds corny if you read it fast but ended up saving our butts, a repair ritual. We picked 3 phrases we'd use exactly as is when someone crossed an old wire, no jokes, no edits. Hers is, "That woke up old me," when I use a voice that used to be our house's weather. Mine is, "Help me back to you," when I feel myself going cave mode and making up stories about being unappreciated because the trash bag didn't get changed. It's stupid how useful words are when we actually agree on what they mean. June hated thunder and vacuum cleaners and the man who reads the meter, but she is learning. We found an online trainer who is basically a stand-up comedian with a clicker, and now she sits before she sploots and waits before she lunges and leaves it only sometimes, but the sometimes is an improvement when what she is supposed to leave is long gone easy. She is also the reason we have a cat, which is a sentence I did not think I would ever write in a happy tone. There was a storm that knocked out power for a day and a half. We did the candlelight thing again and played cards, and my wife taught me how to shuffle like a magician. When the rain slowed to a hard whisper, we heard a sound like someone playing a tiny trumpet under the car downstairs. June went rigid and stared at the door and did this low whine I had never heard before. We went down with an umbrella and 3 towels and a flashlight and a prayer and found the tiniest, angriest gray kitten wedged on top of a tire, covered in oil and bravado. He tried to swat my flashlight like it owed him money. We took him upstairs, cleaned him in the sink while June sat on the bath mat quivering with the effort of not interfering in a way that would involve teeth, and then wrapped him like a burrito and put him in a box with a hot water bottle. He ate like he had a meeting with the president in an hour. We put up found kitten posts everywhere we could think of and nobody claimed him. On day 3 he crawled out and sat square in June's food bowl like a tiny dictator, and I swear June looked at us like, "You see this? You see what I am dealing with?" That was the moment he became ours. We named him April because apparently we are committing to month names now, and because we both liked how it sounded when she said it in her teacher voice. April is chaos of a different flavor. He thinks my laptop is his sunbathing rock. He thinks the back of the sofa is a highway. He sleeps on my wife's hair like he is charging himself overnight. Plants happen because of a joke that became a lifestyle. Try for plant turned into bring home plant, repot plant, apologize to plant, Google plant rehab at 2 a.m. August is thriving. September is a pothos that refuses to die even though June lovingly harasses it. October is a fern that is beef with me and I can feel it. Our windowsills look like a rescue center now, and we text each other pictures of new leaves like we're grandparents. My father, who used to call me to remind me to check my oil, now calls to ask, "How is your snake, the August?" We are, somehow, those people. We moved. I am writing that like it was a decision and not a force of nature. Our old place started to feel like a shirt that didn't stretch the way it used to. 2 people building careers from home, a dog who thinks every chair is a throne, a kitten who thinks gravity is more like a guideline, plants multiplying like rumors. It got tight. On a walk we saw a for rent sign on a building with a balcony that actually exists, and my wife looked at it like a person looks at a dessert menu when they know they already will order something. We called, we looked, and the place had light like somebody believed in us. The rent was more than the old place, but my new job's calmer schedule and slightly better pay made the numbers not look like a horror movie. We moved on a weekend with 3 friends, 2 borrowed trolleys, and 1 truck that looked like it might retire mid-ride. June lost her mind for 24 hours and then claimed the balcony by putting her head through the bars like she was inhaling a whole neighborhood. April discovered pigeons and, for a day, thought he could fly. I caught him with my hand under his belly like a parent catching a toddler who believes in stairs more than physics. Our first night in the new place, we ate cold siomai sitting on the floor and our voices echoed enough that I could hear us as if a second version of us was talking back. We hung the bowl in a new spot on a little shelf and made an inside joke out of bowing to it every night at 7 like we were in a sitcom nobody else was watching. We decided that the balcony would be the one place where phones are never allowed and feelings are, which sounds dumb and also works, which is this whole year in a sentence. The students she tutors keep sending her messages that make me want to buy billboards with her face and hire this woman. She is a wizard on them. She started an online review group for kids who can't afford paid classes, and our living room on Tuesday nights looks like a newsroom of one. I do admin for her like I'm her intern and she pays me in shoulder massages and the way she calls me amor in front of other people like she forgot to be shy. My proudest moment was watching a kid who was convinced he was bad at math explain a problem back to her and get it right. I have never been a big person for church, but if belief is a thing that lives in your chest and pushes on your ribs when you look at good happening, that was it. We had a fight that actually had a sequel. Money, of course. Not a dramatic one, nobody slammed doors, but a sticky one with little barbs. My job paid later than my old job that first month and the overlap of deposits and bills was tight. She asked me to send the electric bill right away and I heard it the wrong way in my head, like a tally sheet. I snapped and said, I know, in that tone that makes peace bubble away. She went quiet in the bad way. We did our ritual, she told me, that woke up old me, and I said, help me back to you, and then we stood next to the sink and cried a little and did math, not just numbers math, rolls math. We opened a joint account properly instead of the half system we had been running on. We made a dumb, fancy sounding thing called the always money envelope where we keep cash for emergencies that are not actually emergencies but feel like them, unexpected delivery fees, battery for the smoke alarm, the time April knocked a glass off the counter and it atomized on the tiles. It's small but now when something surprises us we don't go, can we? We go, get the envelope. It has a sticker on it that says, in my wife's handwriting, chill. We went back to The Sims because of course we did. He built us a balcony that looks like our actual one and then hid a secret door in the back that goes to a tiny room with only candles and a stereo. I named it the panic room/dance floor. Our Sims had twins because the game has a wicked sense of humor. We looked at each other and said, in sync, nope, and then I said, not yet, and she said, maybe later, and then we both laughed because saying it out loud felt both like sacrilege and relief. This is not a baby announcement. This is a plant and animals and healing announcement. We did, however, put Ask Doctor about timeline and vitamins on the calendar in a month that doesn't feel like it's chewing our ankles. The calendar next to it says invite parents for dinner and fix balcony screen because April is a genius and buy a proper cake pan because the cheesecake deserves rights. I promised the internet, apparently, a cheesecake. Fine. We made one. My wife did not let me forget the gelatin. It set like a dream. I piped tiny hearts on top with blueberry jam in a way that looked like an elementary school art project and she kissed my sticky finger and said, we are ridiculous, like it was a compliment. We took a slice to our new downstairs neighbor who had brought our mail up on move-in day with a welcome post-it that looked like a sticker from a teacher's desk. He turned out to be the kind of person who has an extra screwdriver and also knows the names of the stray cats on the block. June approved him after 3 non-consecutive meetings and a treat test. I don't have a third act twist. Life is an accordion right now, big one week, small the next. We're learning the rhythm. My wife is asleep with April on her hair like a dictator hat and June is sighing in the hall because she wants to be invited to a party that is literally just sleep. The fan makes the airplane noise it always makes and there is a plant leaf that wasn't there yesterday. I am a person who knows where the bowls are without looking now. I am a person who puts his phone away at 7 on purpose. I am married to the girl who used to argue for floppy ears on a hypothetical dog and now says, June, off, like a sentence that has always existed. If the old me shows up, he gets 1 seat, not the whole bus. If she finds this update in a few days again because the internet is nosy and kind, hi, wife. There is Palabok left in the fridge. The balcony is doing that thing with the light. I put your phone in the bowl for you because you fell asleep grating. We have a life to go look at.